And good morning, everybody. We're live. Congratulations. You made it through the week. Another week of amazing food safety, fantastic products, amazing stuff. Not McDonald's hamburgers in some cases, but most of it doing good. And part of it with food safety and something that you never hear is thanks. But guess what? Cori and I today, yeah, we're going to say it. Thank you. We really appreciate everything that you do to help us keep us safe. So if you're new to the chat, welcome. Pull up a chair. My name is Brian Armentrout with the Food Leadership Group, and every week at this time, 8 a.m. Mountain Time, 10 a.m. Eastern on Fridays, we live stream on X and YouTube, and we talk about all things food safety. And part of it is I get to bring amazing guests on like Cori Muse from Muse Food Safety Solutions. Cori, how are you today?
I'm good. I'm good.
I think I'm kind of getting my intro down. I think I'm doing a lot better job. It was rough in the beginning, I tell you. I think I got it down now. So part of what we do, guys, and please let us know in the comments where you're at. So I'm in Loveland, Colorado, where we had our first snow this week, Cori. A little bit of a dusting, so not too bad. Very gray outside. More's on the way. So winter is arriving.
Yeah, it's still pretty hot down here. You can see I'm in a tank top.
Tasia, good to see you. Yep, Minneapolis, they've been getting some, it's on the way. Although Jill Stuper was saying it's been very mild in Minnesota. So hopefully you don't get much of that. Bonna, good to see you. This is what I love about the chat, right? Is we all, it's becoming this really, really cool ritual where we get together as a group and we talk about all things food safety. Elena, good to see you, of course. Yep, oh, she's got, look at that cool emoji, the snowman in the snow. That's too cool. She does all the cool stuff. You Missy, hopefully I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Please forgive me if I'm incorrect there. Jigar, welcome as well. Wow, new faces, welcome. We love it when we have new faces here on the chat. So if you are new, hey, Joe, good to see Joe. So if you are new, you're in for a special treat because whenever Cori is on, we always have an amazing show. She's got a great food safety consultancy group in Texas, and she does all kinds of work out there around clown snakes and all these crazy things that go on in the food industry. And if you're not connected with Cori on LinkedIn, why? You need to be connected with Cori. So we got a ton to cover today. But everybody, before we get going here, please join us for a ceremonial drink of your favorite beverage. Cheers. So Jigar is a student. Welcome. Tasia, we have not announced the topic yet. So our topic today is inpatient comments. No, that's not our comment for today. I did allude to it a little bit with McDonald's. Our topic today is suppliers. Oh my goodness, suppliers, right? So part of this is, why is it a preventive control? And I think a big chunk of this, Cori, right, is with supplier control, it's super important. We've seen, like we just referenced here with the onions and the McDonald's, suppliers have such control over your process and you don't even really think about it. Big ones have been coming up, right? Cinnamon, lead in cinnamon. And of course, Peanut Corporation of America, right, Cori, with, oh my goodness, did they cause a mess?
Yeah. Yeah, your supplier is your base foundation. So it's easy to overlook, but it's something that should not be overlooked.
Right. And I think part of the problem around this too is and we'll get into this on what's the correct strategy to kind of tackle this issue, is resource allocation. Because part of the problem, Cori, is if you're a small company, you don't have a lot of resources to go out and audit suppliers and check up on things. And a lot of times you're using co-mans who are buying stuff on your behalf and making them in your products. So you're not even seeing that side of it. And as your company grows, that problem gets bigger. You think it gets easier, but it doesn't. In my past, when I worked at as part of Dean Foods, overall within Dean Foods, Morningstar, and White Wave Foods, I think we had over 6,000 SKUs of different materials that were being purchased through that system. You can't audit all that, can you?
No. There's no good way to check every single supplier.
No.
But there is a way to manage the risk appropriately.
Correct. And I was doing a little thing here. I wanted to see if anybody asked me about the dad joke. I'm a little disappointed. Nobody said, where's the dad joke? So now you're getting the dad joke, and you're going to enjoy it, whether you like it or not, everybody. All right, Cori, here you go.
Okay.
The paper here like Letterman. Why can't a nose ever be 12 inches long?
I don't know.
Well, then it would be a foot.
Oh.
Gets a trombone. Elena said she was waiting. Oh, yes. Elena said, yeah, PCA, Peanut Corporation, my first food safety story, and I learned how I missed my passion. Yeah, absolutely. And part of that story too, right? So we're all familiar with Parnell and his jail term, and I post on this a lot in locals. Constantly, this guy's trying to get out of jail, and it's like, no, stay there. You did this. But part of what people forget in this story, Cori, is that the quality manager, she went to jail too for a few years. And the big reason for that was she knew what was going on and tried to use the excuse, and that's all it was, well, the CEO told me to ship. It's not my fault. No, you knew. And people died as a result of that. And she has to live with that for the rest of her life. Horrible. Oh, can't even imagine. So your suppliers, and what was interesting with the PCA piece as well too, is I forget who it was, Cori, maybe you can help me out on this. One of the major food manufacturers had audited PCA and wouldn't accept them as a supplier. They saw the problems and they
I'm not
dodged
sure
that.
which company that was.
Yeah, it was one of the major ones. If anybody remembers in the comments, let me know there on that. But today, what we wanted to talk about was some real practical approaches for that supplier control piece. It's that hidden landmine of risk in your company that you don't really think about, because a lot of times, right, this stuff's just being received in and you get the COAs and maybe you've got a damaged load or whatever, but you really don't think about it that much, but you need to. There's a reason why FDA put that as a preventive control. And they said, controlling your suppliers is so important that this needs to be in those top 4 things that you need to be working on. Joe's right there. AIB was the auditing company. Absolutely correct. They gave them that third-party certification, but there was an independent food company that went in and audited themselves as well and would not buy from them after that audit. So part of this is, how do you share that information? So we'll kind of put that one on the side as well. So to kind of start our chat off on supplier management, Cori, I kind of put together what I'm calling the golden rules of supplier management. So I kind of want to see what you think of these, and if I kind of hit the nail on the head here, or if I missed some stuff. So everybody in the comments, let us know on that too, please. And this is one I learned definitely with foreign suppliers. If you are trying to approve a new supplier, and you don't know anything about them and they're brand new, there's a small window of opportunity for you to get what you need to approve them and start looking at their process. And that is before they get paid.
Exactly. That's a big one.
Yep. And let's see. Austin had a question here. I wonder who from FDA went to prison after they found out the baby formula issue but failed to act. Yeah. Nobody. Exactly right. So definitely, when a new supplier is being set up, before that first invoice is cut, before actually money changes hands, in quality assurance, you got a ton of power around that, right? And they will jump through hoops for you. And part of this is, it's a really good indicator early on of what type of partner they're going to be. So if you say, hey, listen, I need a copy of your food safety plan and I need your last third-party audit with your corrective actions. I just don't want your cert. I want it all. I want to see if you had any 483s. Have you had any recalls, right? The questions of what I call first pass is, okay, do they understand the basics? So, I mean, if they come back to you, Cori, and say, food safety plan, what's that? Okay, next, right?
Exactly.
You know that's somebody you shouldn't be buying from. If they are cooperative and get you that information quickly and respond to your questions and you get a better understanding of how they're doing their business, good sign. if they're slow, if they're uncooperative, if they are, if they question everything. What's up? Well, we don't share that information. Oh, okay. Well, then I don't share with you either. Bye.
Yeah.
You have to have very clear standards, and procurement needs to understand that too, don't they?
They do. I mean, a lot of times they'll say, oh, this is proprietary information. It's not. If you're doing business with another food company, you have to demonstrate that you have effective food safety. And the only way to do that is to share documents. And we sign NDAs. This is the standard in the food industry. This is not something new. So for me, it's always a red flag if they won't share or they start saying, oh, it's proprietary. We can't share that. You can't see that. Maybe you can come to our site and we'll put it in front of your face for 2 seconds and rip it away. Those are all big, big red flags.
Absolutely. And so like Ali's saying here is if they fight you, huge. And Teja's saying here too, most food companies only ask for COAs, gigantic mistake. And if you're only doing that, FDA is not going to be happy with you at all, because that is insufficient. And you need to do much, much more than that. You need to understand their risks and how they're controlling those things.
And COAs can be falsified as well.
Oh yeah. Well, and guess what? GFSI certificates can too.
Yeah.
Fraud for certificates is a big issue. Larry brought up, and this is a giant topic, and this is going on right now. Right? It is reorganization of FDA, and now RFK is putting videos out. There was a really good one I saw on YouTube, and I would hate to be one of these food companies, but he was talking about all the different chemicals and things, and he was focusing on yellow dye in this little video he did. And he had different products lined up in front of him on the counter. And I would imagine if I was one of those food companies, I would just go, oh really? Oh my God. Right, so there's marketing people running around all over the place for that. You can bet. Look that up on YouTube and watch that for sure. As Bonnie says here, this information is not proprietary. If they want an NDA, fine. If you think that you have trade secrets that you have in your processes, here, we'll sign here too. We need to be partners in this process. You cannot hide this information. And that time before you get paid is the only window that you have to do those type of things. What I've noticed as well, Cori, is some industries are much more secretive than others. I was kind of curious what you think about that. So, for example, flavor houses, really, really secretive.
Oh yeah, very, very difficult to get the full formulation. But if you have a good supplier, I worked with a snack food company that everyone's probably heard of, Frito-Lay, and there were ways to work with our seasoning suppliers where we could still assure safety and quality without knowing every single detail. But it's a very intimate relationship with your supplier when you're doing that. It's not just asking for info at the end of the year or when there's a recall or there's an issue. You're visiting their facilities, they're coming to your site, you're really kind of holding hands, having a dance. And if you're not doing that, you're putting your business at great risk.
Yeah, absolutely. The next rule is they will tell you what they think you want to hear. 100%. I remember in my past, we were looking at qualifying a coconut supplier. So coconut cream, coconut oils for different products. And they were in the Philippines, and they sent over information. I started looking at it, and I had questions. So got the CEO on the phone and started asking stuff about their food safety plan. And after about 5 minutes of this, Cori, he went, Brian, tell you what, let me just stop you there. I'm like, yes. And he goes, all right, the documents that you're reading through, I went to the local university and I had them put together a plan for me because I knew I needed this to sell product in the US. I don't even know what it says.
Yeah, no idea.
Oh, okay. Huge, right? Other things, especially when you get into risky areas. Cinnamon. I was looking at in the past a supplier for cinnamon and started talking with the supplier. So cinnamon generally comes from very specific areas. Sri Lanka is a big area for cinnamon, things like, and it's the bark of the tree. So exposed to everything. And so company I was working with was looking at cinnamon from Vietnam. It's like, okay. Started talking with them. like, okay, well, there's a lot of risk with cinnamon, guys. How are you controlling for these pathogens? How are you controlling for E. coli? What are you doing for pesticides? And they're like, what? We just go out and peel the bark off a tree and grind it up. What are you talking about? Done. Right? No way.
Yeah.
Absolutely no way.
Yeah. And to that point about telling you what you want to hear, I think there's one big thing that giant flashing lights, the PCQI course is not sufficient. And I think that there's been a lot of misunderstanding after that course. I see so many suppliers doing the letter of guarantee, and that, I mean, it's past the potato. They're not looking, they don't care, but they're writing letters and they're grabbing the documents and they have their PCQI playbook for supplier approval. And I've seen more supplier approval programs that are, I don't know how to say it nicely, they're just Mickey Mouse. They copied and pasted the manual and they have the documents, but when you really dig into it and you try to figure out, did you visit this facility? If you did visit, who did you send? Did you send someone qualified? Did you farm it out to someone else? Was it an activity or was it an effective activity? I think that's the difference here is you have a lot of companies doing activities, following directions, and they may be checking all the boxes, but the ethics among that and the sincerity of what they're doing is not supplier approval, or maybe they don't know how to do it, but that's why these conversations are so important.
Right. And all of this implied within everything that we're talking about here today is if you're working in quality and you're looking at these supplier systems that we're talking about here today, is don't do this in a vacuum. Work with your procurement group. It makes your life so much easier. It's really, really hard when procurement's already gone through all the work and done the request for a quote and got pricing and marketing is moving forward with label changes and whatever. And then you find out in quality and then you have to be the bad guy. And everybody's like, well, why didn't you say this 2 months ago? It's like, well, right? No, don't be that guy.
Duncan had a really good comment up there that said any contract should be subject to approval. So first payment should be irrelevant. So, I mean, that's a good point too, writing into your contracts these requirements and expectations so that when purchasing walks away, like you said, everyone's not just like, party, we can do whatever we want now.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Great comments coming here, guys. I love it. Golden rule number 3. Their specification will be written to their benefit, not yours.
I know. That's my favorite. That's my favorite. Send me a spec.
Yeah.
Moisture 0 to 100. Cool.
Standard play count less than 500,000.
Yeah.
Right. And you need to dig through that stuff and really look through it, right? The procurement group needs that information because if it's, and this goes back to our conversation around persuasion, what is in writing is much more persuasive than what is discussed. So if the procurement group is armed with your specification and goes to suppliers and says, okay, here's what we need you to make for us. That's the position, that's the negotiating standpoint you want to start from. And you need to understand too, that's what it is. It's a negotiation. There's some things that are deal breakers. It's like, no, salmonella, listeria, E. coli, heavy metals, performance characteristics for quality that R&D cares about, right? Those things are set in stone. You have to meet these requirements. Other things are negotiable, shelf life of the products or things like this. And the procurement group needs to understand that.
And it's always helpful to remind them that setting those specs is going to save so much money, not just in rejected product, but process downtime, adjusting controls for depending on what your product is, what you're trying to achieve. If the moisture is too high, there's all these different aspects of that specification that you can use to your advantage. And again, this is normal in industry. So sometimes I work with new food owners and it's like they're scared to ask for these things. They think they don't have a right or they don't want to upset the supplier. This is not unusual. This is common. And if they're a good supplier, they're going to want to work with you because they're going to want to provide you what you want because they want to get paid, and it's a business relationship that goes round and round, but it stops if you send me garbage. And you have to let them know that, or they will send you garbage.
Absolutely. And part of the specification piece of it that you really need to understand, this is why, again, it's so important to have your specification, is let's say, for example, Cori, you're looking at their specification and let's say that you're buying like a non-fat dry milk powder or something. And it says on there, we test for salmonella and E. coli. Oh, okay, good. And then you read a little bit more and it says, okay, we test salmonella at 25 grams. Ooh, well, that's a really small sample size. What's their test methodology? How are they doing it? And you need to have these discussions and then actually talk with them and say, okay, I saw your salmonella testing on there. Okay, good. Number one, that's a very small sample size. How often are you testing for that? Oh, yeah, we pull a 25-gram sample once a year. Whoa, no.
And there's, I mean, I'll try not to get too much into the minutia, but there's so many questions, even with that one thing you said. What lab are you using? Is it an internal lab? Are you using external? If you're using internal, are you calibrating to an external lab? Is that lab calibrating to a reference standard? They're not just doing a quick method. Like you said, what method are they doing? Are we doing the same method? And all of these things are so important, because if not, you're looking at an apple and an orange and trying to make them the same. And you're never going to achieve the goal that you want doing that.
Yeah, and you're avoiding fights. So for example, under FSMA, your third-party laboratories need to be accredited. You just can't go to anybody. They need to be 17025, and under that certification for that laboratory, and I'm sure, right? So we have some really good experts in the chat here on labs, isn't that right, Cortland? And they need to be certified to 17025. Great, that's all their system and everything else. But the actual tests that they are using need to be under that standard as well. So under that standard, the methods and all of that needs to be certified in part of that scope. If it's outside of scope, it's not under the ISO certification. You need to understand that.
You do. And so pointing back to who is doing this activity for you, is it someone on site? And obviously this varies because you have very small companies that maybe they're using consultants because they can't hire people full time, or maybe it's medium size, or maybe it's a big company that has their own microbiology lab and it's accredited. It's such a vast array of how you do this activity. But I will always assert, in each of these situations, we can do this and we can do it effectively. It might take more time, it might take more attention and dedication from your employees, good ethics, sincerity, but we absolutely can do these activities and produce safe food.
Absolutely. And Francine has a good comment here. It's like, yeah, suppliers know, to your point, Cori, is, okay, this supplier doesn't wash, we'll send them the crap. And this supplier pays close attention, we'll send them the good stuff. By the way, very honored to have Francine on here with us today. If you haven't checked out her show, Don't Eat Poop, definitely check that out. Very good show. And again, in food safety, we're all on the same team, right? So I'm always happy to help promote food safety in any way that I can. So another big piece of this with your specification is limits like moisture and things like this. There's all kinds of different ways to test for moisture. And if they've got this big range and you don't know what method they're using and you could drive a truck through it and you start having issues at the plant, we're meeting spec. What are you complaining about? Right? In the meantime, the materials in the warehouse getting moldy and it's turning colors and God knows what. And now you got to go back and renegotiate the spec, which then is probably going to mean what? Money.
Yeah, money, conflict. Let's look at Larry's comment. He says, how about an approved supplier certified at a specific location domestically, but because of whatever they send from another manufacturer from a foreign country in their organization? So you're saying the supplier would have already been certified domestically, but maybe a company hasn't even looked at their foreign location? Is that what you're implying, Larry? Because I would hope they have an FSVP at minimum.
Right. Well, I mean, the bottom line on this, and you know, if you want more information on this, Larry, let us know. But always remember, for your supplier approval, it's not the company, it's the location.
Yes.
You have to approve each location. So if you're buying from a multinational conglomerate and they are making this product in Shanghai and Ho Chi Minh City and whatever else, you need to understand that, and you need to approve each location you're purchasing from.
And be careful because, I mean, I'll admit here, fault. I had a foreign importer lie to me about a manufacturer, but they were so good at the lie. And then we ended up getting illegal pesticides coming in. And that's how I discovered that the FSVP I made wasn't even for the correct manufacturing facility. So, I mean, really dig. And if you smell anything that smells like a rat, do not be afraid to say, I want more information. And if they won't get it, then I guess we can't do business together.
Right. And again, back to rule number one, before they get paid. Something else to be careful of in this area, and thanks for that comment, Larry, because it's triggering other thoughts as well, is brokers and distributors. They are not the manufacturers. They are not. And a lot of times, to your point, Cori, they're reluctant to tell you where. If that's the case, see ya. No, you have to approve plants.
They're everywhere now, especially with the FSVP. We get more and more of these companies operating more as a marketing company, and they're bringing in high-risk ingredients of every kind you can possibly imagine. They have no food experience. They don't really have a lot of integrity because it's not their brand, and it's terrifying. It's a big risk for this country.
Yep, which brings us into the next point, which is trust but verify is the law of the land. How many people, right? In quality, we're very trusting. Right? So, okay, you're going through this process, Cori, and you're looking at new suppliers and things are going well. It's almost like dating, right? It's like, oh, okay, first date went well. You know, things are going good. It's looking great. And you say, hey, can you send us a sample so we can take a look at this material and see if it meets our needs? Okay. Are you sure that sample is representative, or is it just the top shelf stuff that they have in the office that when people ask for samples, they send you a little bit of that?
Yeah, my favorite's when I get the sample and I say, can I see the COA for the lot number? And they say, lot number? What are you talking about? And I'm like, well, you have a shipment coming over of lot XYZ. What's the lot on this? And they're just very confused as to what a lot number even is. So red flag.
Red flag. And a big piece of this, and I give them credit on here quite a bit, is Nestle, right? Nestle's got a kick butt supplier program. And if Nestle can do it, right, the biggest food company in the world, you can do it. And so what they do is on this trust side is like, okay, if you're a trusted supplier and I've been buying from you for years, fantastic. I may do some random checks of your product every now and then coming into my facilities to make sure everything is okay. But as long as everything's going smoothly, yeah, you're here. All right. Joe Schmo, I don't know who the hell you are, supplier from shipping from somewhere overseas. Whoa, risk is up here. I want all this documentation. I want all of this. I'm going to be asking for pre-shipment samples. I'm going to be pulling samples from every single lot of material you send to my plants. And I'm going to be watching you like a hawk until you prove to me that you're a good supplier.
Or fall off the good grace list. And I think that's, especially for big companies, that's how you have to do it. You have to get your main commodities and say, what are the main commodities that are very important to my process? What do they look like? They've got to be safe. Go through risk focus, high risk, medium, low. But to your point, if there's some way to validate over a certain amount of time that this supplier can demonstrate they're doing this effectively, you don't have to monitor them as frequently or with as much requirements. But if they fall off that list, if they have a recall, if you hear something in the news, if you're using Taylor Farms, I would be going back to Taylor Farms now. Even if they're not selling me onions, I'm still going to have a lot of questions about how this happened. And I think it's a fair question to ask of your suppliers.
Right. Well, and that's a good point, Cori, and I want to emphasize that. This is a continuous process, and you need to keep up on this. And you need to follow the recalls and the warning letters, right? And I got my locals group for helping people keep up to date. But there's amazing resources out for that, right? So Bill Marler with his Food Safety News, one of my leading sources. Right? I check that every single day. One of the things I will never eat, thanks to that, is enoki mushrooms. Oh my God. Listeria. I mean, there's a recall. And then someone a few weeks ago had said, well, maybe it's just the foreign suppliers. Well, guess what? We just had a recall for enoki mushrooms domestically.
Yeah. There's something going on there for sure.
Yep.
But
the fifth rule, Cori, is, and this kind of wraps everything that we've been talking about here so far, which is you must align internal expectations for supplier acceptability. Don't be gullible. Every group in the organization has different goals and objectives. Should they align around food safety? Damn right they need to align around food safety. And you need to make sure that senior leadership, food safety culture, understands that that's the case. Procurement's goal cannot be buy cheap stuff. If that's their only goal, you're hosed, right? It needs to be a whole list of things, right?
Good companies. I worked for a very excellent company and some very bad ones. The very excellent company I worked with, purchasing went with me to a lot of the approval meetings, or even if there was an issue, a small issue, and I don't mean an analyst, I'm talking a director, a VP, someone that's writing the checks is coming with me saying, you do what she says, or I don't write the check, or I don't renew your contract. And if you don't have that support from purchasing, that's a red flag for your food safety culture already. And they should want to be involved. I've had other companies that maybe were a little newer and they didn't know, but procurement was very eager to learn. What I want to go with you when you go do approval audits. I want to see what you're looking at. So when I go and you're not with me, then I can see these things and I can come back and tell you. And those are the kind of attitudes that you want to have in an organization. If you don't, try and find a way to chum up to your purchasing team, make friends with them. You know, don't be an asshole about it, but start to open their eyes about how dangerous this is. And you really do need me, the expert, sitting there with you when you're doing these negotiations. It will help in the long run financially for everyone.
Right. Absolutely. And part of this, and this gets back to something I talked about here recently as well, is a good sign of quality leadership is people know what you're going to say before you say it. And that applies to other departments. So the more that you can train procurement in these rules, and especially the first pass, you get them working for you, right? So if procurement is out there sourcing a new material and they start talking with suppliers ahead of you, and they already know that you're going to say no. So if they talk to a supplier and say, okay, well, we need a copy of your food safety plan. Who's it? What's it? Okay, thanks, bye. Good, less work for you. They need to understand the rules of the game just as well as you do.
Yes, every department does.
Yep. So the way I think about this, and I'm a creature of habit, and a lot of ways, the simple things are the best things. And the way I look at supplier control is, of course, plan, do, check, act, right? It's that continuous improvement cycle, and there's nothing more important in what we're doing than that. And you need to be continually monitoring. To Duncan's point, right? When they haven't got paid, they're on their best behavior, right? They're, yes, we're a top-notch supplier. You're going to love working with us. As soon as that money starts coming in, their true behavior starts coming through. So you need to monitor. And step one of this is your plan. Now, we all have limited resources. And kind of what we referenced here earlier, Cori, was small company, large company, it doesn't matter. The problem just gets bigger the bigger you get, is resource allocation. You have limited budget. You have limited allocation of resources. You have only so many people on your team who can look at these. So you have to put together a plan. And I mean, even FDA has to do this. So Glenn Bass is a regional director in their enforcement division, whatever they're called now. And he did a discussion at FSPCA on how he would allocate resources for auditing in FDA. Right? So great model, right? He would say, all right, high risk, ready to eat companies, known issues, recalls, they're at the top of my list. I'm going to make sure we go and visit those people every single year because I worry about them. And then he goes down the list on risk. And so the ones at the bottom of the list may get a visit from FDA every few years or something like that. But he's focusing his resources on where he's most worried. And we need to do that too, right?
Oh, yeah. And that plays into food safety culture as well, because who's setting the resources? It's not always the QA department. Sometimes is fighting for very limited resources. And maybe you have one quality auditor and you're expecting that person to conduct 200 audits in the year, and it's
Mm.
just not going to happen.
Right. You're going to have an auditor for a couple of months and then they're going to quit. They're done.
And corners are going to get cut, and then you're going to fall back to the McDonald's scenario, which I don't know what happened there. I can't wait for Bill Marler to tell us, but I would imagine there were some gaps here, whether it was we were too busy, we outsourced it, something happened where we weren't looking at it. We just weren't looking at it effectively.
Absolutely. So part of this first step around planning is your risk assessment. And again, right, if you can train and work with your procurement group to make them essentially your first level of auditors, right, so that crappy companies, you never even see them, great. But you need to have a risk assessment methodology, high, medium, and low, and also a special category, proprietary. So what are your high risk suppliers? So ready to eat ingredients. So if you're producing, let's say, a yogurt with fruit on the bottom of the cup, that fruit, high risk, right? There's absolutely nothing you're doing with that to mitigate that risk. You're completely relying on that supplier to produce a good fruit base for that strawberry yogurt or whatever it is that you're making. High risk, right? If they screw up, you got a recall and there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah.
Medium. Oh, okay. Well, these are the ones that are, below. And again, right, this methodology is highly flexible. You need to figure it out for yourself. And low risk. Known supplier, been working with them for years. They're supplying us with salt. Do I really need to go audit them? Probably not. Need to pay attention to them, but I don't need to put all of my focus on them. That other special category that I mentioned is proprietary. And this is a lot of times where companies get screwed up. And this is why figure it out before they get paid is so important. If you are buying a patented one source ingredient that's all over the front of your label that you're absolutely locked into, they got you, right? You have to work with them. So you'd better set the terms up early in that relationship to make sure that you don't get hosed, right?
Yeah. And don't be afraid to ask for those things. Because I still assert, I think many companies will be reluctant to ask for something thinking the supplier is going to say, no, I'm not going to do that.
Right. Well, and again, this gets back to persuasion and negotiating skills as well. That's human nature. We always think that we're in the weaker position. Oh, gosh, we really needed this supplier. If we don't get them, what are we going to do, et cetera, et cetera? Well, guess what? They're thinking the same thing. Oh, man, if I'm going to hit my quarterly sales goals, I really need this new client. I really need to make sure that they're happy. I want to go to Aruba on the sales trip. And if I don't get this, they have just as many worries and concerns as you do. So don't let that think that that's one-sided.
Yeah.
I love the comments going on here. And I'm glad you're able to comment on here too, Cori. So keep it up. Awesome. We'd already mentioned this one a little bit earlier, foreign or domestic. If you have a foreign supplier, your level of risk automatically goes up. You just from a resource standpoint, you can't throw people on international plane flights all the time, right? Super expensive. Nobody has the money to do that. So if you're dealing with foreign suppliers, they know that too. They know that you're not going to come visit. You may then send a third-party representative that may or not be effective. You don't know. So foreign suppliers you have to be very, very careful with. And when FSMA was being set up and the foreign supplier verification piece was being set up, FDA sees this risk too, and they wanted to put more stringent measures in that regulation for foreign suppliers. And they actually got shot down by World Trade Organization, who said, you can't do that. That's a barrier to trade and we'll sue you for that. So FDA backed off and gave the responsibility to us. Just a little behind the curtain.
That's going to prove disastrous in the next 5 to 10 years. Just mark my word. It's been recorded.
Absolutely. Bing. And next one is volume, right? You may be buying a low risk material, but if it's the main ingredient you have, you better be taking a look at it.
Oh, yeah.
And by the way, don't forget water. Side note. But if you're a dairy company and you're buying just truckloads of milk that are coming in every single day, you need to be paying close attention to that.
Oh, yeah.
Time, right? We mentioned this earlier too. How well do you know these people? It's trust. This is a trust element. How long have you been working with a supplier? How well do you know them? Do you know the CEO of the company? What is their culture like? Where are they located at? What are their plans? Are they expanding? Are they changing? If that company all of a sudden fires their CEO, something going on there. Is that company undergoing financial stress? If they are they going to cut corners on your product?
Lawsuits, many times with clients, I'll look up and see consumers are suing the company, and it gives you an idea for the company's values for sure.
Yeah. And if this company's in financial straits and they send you bad product, and you'd mentioned earlier continuing guarantees and these type, if they're out of business, that doesn't matter, right? It's on you now. So
Yep.
you have to keep track of these guys on what they're up to. Who does the evaluation? This is one that slips through the cracks. A lot of times companies have co-manufacturers for a variety of reasons. Even big companies have co-manufacturers just because they don't have line capacity, or maybe they're launching a new product, or they want to investigate new materials or something, right? They'll partner with co-mans. Small companies, it's their lifeblood. They don't have the capital to buy a $500 million plant and start making product. They have to use co-mans to make their products. And that's a big risk, because a lot of times co-mans, one of their selling points, Cori, is, hey, come and have your product made at our facility. It's turnkey. We do everything for you.
Yep. We source the ingredients. We do the testing. You don't worry about anything, but you should worry.
Yeah, because guess what? It's your name on the recall, not them.
Yep.
Great comments here, guys. Kind of going back through this here. Make sure, guys, the questions here, let me know. So understand that. So a lot of times with suppliers, if they are doing the purchasing, that means they're responsible for the supplier assessment, but you're responsible for assessing their assessment. Okay? So you're not off the hook. You are not off the hook. You need to treat your co-mans just like you would any other supplier. Interesting little side note on that I thought of with Larry and foreign suppliers. I was working with a company one time that was importing. They had a division in the US, and they were an Italian company bringing in their products. So canned tomatoes and all kinds of Italian products. And they wanted to know what they needed to do under foreign supplier and FSMA. I'm like, well, guess what? Your division in Italy is a foreign supplier, and you need to evaluate them. And that just blew their mind. They're like, no, but they're us. I'm like, no, doesn't matter. They're a supplier. FDA is going to want to see your foreign supplier verification processes.
That's true.
Yep. So plan, right? You got to put that plan together and allocate resources. And a bit of advice on that is, do not 100% allocate all of your resources every year. Save a little bit, because shit's going to happen. You're going to have a bad supplier, whatever. Right? And if you don't have those resources, that means you need to bring in somebody like Cori or something like this to do it on your behalf, who then has to get up to speed if she doesn't know you or your business. And that's going to cost more money and everything else. But plan. You have to plan these things. Things always happen. Suppliers go sideways. You have problems, and you need to have that.
Sure.
So plan, right? That's plan. Do. Set up a procedure with procurement. Again, stuff in writing, much more valuable. Set up a procedure with procurement. You need to be this with procurement. They need to be your best friend. They are protecting you, and you need to protect them as well. And giving them this information and educating them is critical. And a lot of times in companies, the head of procurement with the company, very experienced and knowledgeable in these things, but they're not the ones doing the groundwork. They're not the ones doing the auditing, the evaluations, and the phone calls, and the negotiation. You need to work with the head of procurement, put programs in place and procedures for everything that we're talking about here, and then make sure the people who are actually doing the groundwork to get these things done know what they're doing.
Yes, that's a big one.
Another good one, we're seeing this a lot, and the Ukraine war really, I think, emphasized this with like sunflower oil, for example, because that was the leading supplier in the world of sunflower oil, which went away, and then now all of a sudden you had to go find it somewhere else. Secondary suppliers, super important, right? And a lot of people are like, I don't have the time, or I can't do that. Well, you need them, right? But you need to look at it in terms of that risk. You don't need a secondary supplier for everybody, but you need to understand where your risk is. High, medium, low, and proprietary. Proprietary, you're stuck, right? You can't buy that anywhere else. So you need to pay really close attention to those guys. But for those key ingredients, who are your backup suppliers? And a lot of times, Cori, that's hard because again, they want to be paid. And if you go
Yeah.
to them and say, hey, listen, we want to make you a backup supplier, so we're not going to give you any money, but we want you to do all this work. It's kind of hard.
Yeah. Not a lot of motivation.
Right. So you have to rely upon the persuasion and negotiating skills of your procurement group to say, hey, listen, we want to get you in the mix. Our current supplier is probably not going to be our current supplier in a year or so. So do what we're asking you to do, and we'll do you a solid in the future. Right. You have to have that back and forth.
Yes.
Specification and ranges, again, right? That needs to be part of those actions around due and checking those products and checking those samples, which really gets into the next point. But you need to have a solid plan around how you're going to be doing that over the course of the year. Because, well, number one, you need to build a budget for that, right? You're going to be doing lots of testing with probably a lot of different widely varied tests. So microbiological and chemical and Prop 65. Oh, my goodness. We should do a whole show on Prop 65. Right? Those standards are changing all the time. And if you work in quality, we're getting letters all the time from our customers saying, do you certify that your product is free of this particular trace chemical or whatever under Prop 65? I don't know. Right?
Yeah.
Now you got a lot of work to do because you also have to go back to your suppliers and find that out too. Love the comments. So set up programs. Next is check. Oh, so important, right? Oh, new supplier, they're qualified. I'm done.
No, continuous monitoring.
Yep. Set up that verification program based on everything that we're talking about. Trust, but verify. Hi, Cori, I'm your brand new supplier of whey protein. Okay, great. Here's what I want from you. I want pre-shipment samples. I want auto samples from the entire production run. I want samples at the plant. I want my QA manager in the plant to be pulling samples himself. I want. You need to set that program up. And then understand over time, if they're doing well, you can ratchet them down, right? Okay, good supplier.
Yeah.
So as Duncan says here, right, for contingency suppliers, give them a little bit of taste of it, right? Give them a little bit of money. Say, okay, well, you are a secondary supplier, and we'll give you 25% of the business as a secondary supplier. Fantastic strategy, Duncan. Thanks for bringing that up. Because then you can start getting a sense of how they do, right? Because if all of a sudden you have to switch because that primary supplier, the CEO quits and leaves to Bermuda with his secretary, okay, well, I guess I have a new primary supplier. It gives you that insight and it gives them that motivation again, right? Money gives them that motivation to be a good partner with you because they can see that future business down the road. Oh, just a little side note on this as well too, is don't be bureaucratic on this. I've worked with large companies that have very automated systems for this. And I had a large international supplier who would send me their specification through their automated system every year. And I would then go through and cross everything off and say, no, this is wrong. This is not our spec. This is not correct here. This is not our method. And I would send it back, nothing. And then next year they would send it to me again. It's just like, idiots, right? But I had documented that I had contested their specification. So if there was ever a problem, I would just, I told you, right? I told you. Don't be bureaucratic. If risk changes, modify your program. You have to keep up on this. Onions, is McDonald's going to have a more robust sampling and testing program and supplier program? They better.
Yeah. Let's hope
They
so.
found a weakness. They found a gap. It's human nature, right? Because of this subject that we're talking about today, Cori, a lot of moving parts, a lot of things going on, right? Every procurement group in every company I've ever worked with, Cori, super busy. They don't have time to sit back. They have initiatives. They have new products. They have cost-cutting projects, all these type of things. And the procurement group is trying to manage all of this for hundreds, if not thousands of different SKUs within a company. You have to keep up on what's going on there. As we mentioned, these one-off regulations, so a lot of companies will say, okay, well, Prop 65 in California, we're not going to produce separate products for California. Therefore, we're going to make sure that this meets all the requirements. You need to understand that. And the Prop 65 levels and what they're including in the different products are changing all the time. and test methodologies get better and better. How does that work for you? You need to understand that within your company. And there's a big interface there between QA, legal, and procurement on how you're going to be managing. And there's law firms out there for Prop 65. That's all they do.
Yep, just sitting in the grass waiting to sue somebody.
Yep. And so you need to be prepared for that. The analogy I use on that is like weights and measures. So you need to have the data and the information to defend your company, because to your point, Cori, all they have to do is go out, pull your product off the shelf and test it, and then send you a notice of violation, and then they want to get paid. But guess what? That notice of violation never goes away. It's on the public register all the time. So you need to figure out how you're going to manage that risk, and your suppliers are critical for that. Because under Prop 65, without getting into too much detail, right, is some things are riskier than others. If you have crops that are in close contact with the ground, so peas and rice and all these type of things, cocoa was notorious for lead contamination. You need to understand this, and this overlaps strongly with where are you sourcing from, right? So you need to understand these types of things. I heard just a little thing on that. I heard from a food safety Prop 65 lawyer one time that they had an issue with a supplier for high lead and they couldn't figure out what it was, because they were doing everything right. And it was a good product. It was a cocoa and it was good. And they were trying to track down the lead in the process. It ended up being a brass sampling spoon. Oh. So they would go into the bag to do it. There was enough lead in that brass sampling spoon that it was able to be picked up in the test.
Wow.
Yeah. Isn't that crazy? You have to understand those. Oh, yes. Yeah, Francine said here. Yeah, absolutely. I heard about this too. China was moving edible oils in chemical tankers. They pulled double duty, right? You have to watch that super closely. Good point, Francine. Carriers are suppliers.
Yep.
Carriers are suppliers. Don't forget. So check all these type of things. Then the next piece, and Allie had referenced this earlier, is ACT. You have to have a supplier scorecard and an evaluation system for your suppliers. They need this feedback, because a lot of times, right, they're big companies too. And just because you had a bad COA and you sent a notice to the quality manager at the facility that sent the product, that it's getting back to corporate. No, probably not. What motivation do they have to tell their corporate team that, hey, guess what? We suck. No, they don't. And so you have to put together that program, and you have to build it with procurement. And part of this system, and I had great success with this, is it's like, okay, procurement, tell me what you care about for suppliers. Okay, well, I care about cost, I care about damage, orders on time, R&D support, et cetera, right? Okay, cool. Here's what I care about for quality. I care about recalls, I care about third-party audit, I care about FSMA compliance, I care about whatever. And then you put together a scorecard and you say, okay, I get 30 points, you get 30 points. Let's figure out how to score these guys. And then you sit down with them. And again, this goes back to your risk assessment in the first part. This is why this is so important, is, okay, great. Who am I going to evaluate? You can't sit down and have meetings with everybody. So you have to put out a quarterly schedule and say, okay, I'm going to meet with 5 of my key suppliers with procurement at the end of the quarter. And then you go over those results with them. And Cori, every time I did this, and I would sit on these meetings with my procurement guys, is that representative of that company was always surprised. We would say, you guys suck. And they're like, well, what do you mean? It's like, all right, procurement, go. Your orders are late. They're not correct. We're missing product. You don't respond to our emails in a timely manner. And then I would go, yeah. And in addition to that, your COAs are out of compliance. You're not meeting your specification. And that representative for the company is sitting there going, what? I had no idea. Yeah. Here's the information. Now go fix it. And they would, right? Because why? Money.
And again, it's in writing. Data is very powerful in your face like that. And it's also a good way to incentivize your suppliers to say, if you can go green on all these, then maybe we'll throw you a party, or maybe we'll give you some sort of financial incentive. I've seen companies pay $10,000 a quarter if you maintain shipments without us having to reject them. Just there's all kinds of things you can do with that scorecard to incentivize or de-incentivize your suppliers.
Right. So to Duncan's comment earlier, carrot and stick, right? It's like, okay, if you are a tier 1 supplier with us and we love you, guess what? We're going to give you more business.
Yeah.
If you suck, we're going to take business away, and guess what? We're going to give it to the people that we do like. Right? Persuasion, carrot and stick, right? You have to understand these programs and systems. Oh my goodness, time is flying. We're down to the 5-minute mark, Cori. Closing thoughts. What would you like to leave people with here today? What you thinking?
I mean, just the overreaching, the trust but verify. When you're verifying, make sure the person doing the verification is qualified and that their desired goal is to do an effective activity. And that's really, really what's key. It's not about documenting it. It's not about doing it. It's about having the intention and the desired goal to find a supplier that is effective in their food safety controls. So that's what I'll leave everybody with.
Yep. And yeah, so my kind of closing thought around this is documents don't take the place of discussion. Right? When I would learn the most about suppliers is, okay, fine. Got the documents. Thank you very much. Let's schedule a call to go over what I got. I've got some questions for you. Right? Emails are fine, but you really never know who you're talking to in the emails. Get them on the phone. Talk with them. Okay, fine. They're in the Philippines on the other side. Fine. Vary your work. This isn't your normal routine for work. Vary your schedule. Accommodate the time differences. It's important that you say, hi, so you want to supply us. Let's talk a little bit. Let me get to know you, right? Just like we talk about here in the chat all the time. There's technical skills, and then there's the people and the management skills. Same thing here, right? Everybody seeing a pattern here? Right? So you have to build those relationships with those suppliers. And there's hidden benefits for that too. So let's say, Cori, that you do have a problem. You can call them up and say, Bill, what are you doing? You know, you sent some product in my plan. It's damaged. It's out of spec on the COA. It's probably not going to hurt us for manufacturing. We can work around it. But what happened? Right? Yeah, we had a production issue. Why didn't you tell me? You could have called me in advance and let me know. Yeah, Brian, you're right. I should have. Thank you. Can we not do this again in the future? Yes.
Yeah.
Right?
Build
Human relationships.
Those relationships are important.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. So, and as we see, so Francine here had mentioned earlier, Africa with the pesticides. Yeah, I read about that too. So South Africa has gone through some real problems, right, with the Poloni and the Tiger brands with the Listeria. Now they've got this big pesticide issue. I think, Francine, the last I saw, 6 children had died, and then they tracked it back to this illegal pesticide that was being used. Right? Terrible. Absolutely terrible. Gosh, good chat. Wow. Thank you, guys. What I love about this is I think we're kind of going on a curve now, right? We're getting more and more regulars, more and more comments, and the expertise in here, right? I don't know. After a while, Cori, I think we can just quit talking because I think everybody here in the comments knows more than we do. So keep it up, guys. And Allie had a great comment here, and I think it's a great way to close out. Great partnerships with your suppliers is key, right? It's a relationship, and you need to approach it that way. I think early on in the chat here, I used the dating analogy, right? Yes, right? You're trying to find a good partner. Same thing here. Right?
Yeah.
So with that, guys, we're gonna bring the chat here to a close. Another amazing one. Hopefully, we've given you a few things to think about here, right? These systems don't have to be fancy, but they have to be effective. So make sure that you've got a good system in place. And with that, we're going to bring our chat to a close here today. And Cori, thank you. As always, an amazing discussion, and you're such a good resource. And Cori's email is there. If you have questions or I have questions for me, reach out. We love to help. And if you need consulting work, Cori's got an amazing business in Texas. She works with a lot of great companies, and she's highly respected out there. If you need some help, go talk with Cori. I'm sure she can help you out, especially with those darn suppliers. So we'll be back here next week at 8 a.m. Mountain Time, 10 a.m. Eastern for the next food safety chat, where I'll have another amazing guest on. And all of my awesome participants who joined us on the chat, thank you. We really appreciate all that you do. In the meantime, have a great weekend. Get out there. Have a little bit of fun here in Colorado. Hopefully I don't have to scoop snow. I think it's probably too warm. I don't like scooping snow. So nice, fun weekend, long weekend for some people. Enjoy it. And we'll see you back here next week. Thanks, everybody. And we'll see you soon.